Go for it.
The main question that people are probably going to think is like target lock. Will turrets automatically fire? Now, for months and months, I've talked to people about this problem where if you're in like a destroyer, for example, all you need to kill a destroyer is 2 ships because the destroyer can only shoot at one of those 2 ships. And we have discussed with the community the inevitable need for a point defense slot that will automatically shoot at things, right? You'll always control your main guns and stuff like that. But I have discussed for months the idea that we'll need some sort of point defense slot that will be automatic. And target lock is a step in that direction. Like, nothing has been worked on yet in that direction, but point is, we will eventually have essentially an automated point defense turret.
Yeah, and so to expand on that a little bit, we always want your main guns to be manually controlled. Yeah, so if you're in a or at least for most ships, your main guns will be manually controlled. So if you're in your destroyer, most of your DPS is going to be given out by your main guns. But then there will be those dedicated, probably 2 to 4 point defense slots, which can help you take out, pesky little targets. But we've also sort of messed around with the idea of having, uh, you know, certain classes of ships that are like all about point defense and get buffs to that. And we'll definitely be exploring some of that soon as well. Um, I guess the other thing some people have been asking, what are logistics turrets? Logistics turrets are essentially healing. So if you are in an engagement and you're in a fleet, maybe you can dedicate a couple of ships to having healing turrets, and they'll be able to, either heal the shield or the hull of friendly ships. And we had tried to think of ways to do this earlier, like without a target locking system, and none of it ever made any sense. So we really needed a target locking system for that, and now we have it. So that sort of work is unblocked. Should we talk about uh
You can message me in the
yeah,
dev.
I'm gonna message you.
Yeah, it's fine.
Should we talk about those? We've
If you,
talked
if
about
you
those.
want, like, there's no problem because like it's been discussed a lot,
Yeah.
and like if you want to talk about it, that's fine.
Yeah,
Because
I'm
like
pretty sure they're on the
I'm
roadmap too.
I'm
Like,
totally good with discussing this stuff because as you just said in general chat, it's like keeping secrets has never
yeah.
really worked. So
Yeah, so missiles are definitely something we want to do. They've been on the roadmap basically for since the roadmap was
forever.
created, yeah. Um, and obviously, I mean, I had a prototype of a missile system working like almost 2 years ago, but the issue that we had was that we didn't have a target locking system, and so it sucked. Um, missiles will be missile turrets and bombers, to the question that just came in, are things that we're definitely thinking about. They're things that we have planned. There's no promises of when they're going to release, but they would both require the use of a target locking system. Um, and missiles are just going to be super interesting because they will be, I mean, yeah, so they're going to lock onto their targets, right? Like you'll be able to evade them, but you're not going to have to necessarily like line your ship up, all the time, or line your camera up in order to fire. They'll go towards their target automatically, and some of them will have better guidance systems than others and be more likely to hit and whatnot. Um,
Missiles will not be consumables. We have decided against ammunition in general, mostly because ammunition like this kind of messes with PvE, and also no other gun in the game really uses ammunition, so it's weird to have one use ammunition and the rest not. And then someone mentioned flares. Yeah, there will be plenty of ways to fight against missiles, to dodge missiles. Missiles will have tracking, but they're not going to have like tracking a maximum level Paragon level of tracking. Like
yeah,
they have guidance, but you can still dodge them. Not
yeah,
only can you dodge them, point defense will try to shoot them down, and you can have like flares and countermeasures.
And the more like powerful your missile is, the chances are the less like or the worse guidance systems it's going to have. So, if you have a super powerful torpedo that you're going to launch at something, it's not going to be able to whip around and follow a Paragon. To fight a Paragon, you need like, smaller rockets. Um, with better guidance systems and faster turning. But yeah, missiles are going to be very powerful, but they'll be more counterable than other types of turrets and weapons in the game because there will be multiple ways to take out missiles. Likely, some of the point defense turrets will be able to take out missiles, and it's also likely that, as Arctic said, we'll include things like flares as being an active module. That's part of our ship loadout overhaul, which we've been hinting at. And so, yeah, there will be definitely ways to counter missiles, but they'll also be very, very powerful. So, yeah, okay, I see you pinged me with, are we going to get fighters with kinetic weapons? Um, we can talk about that a little bit. That's really fun. So the ship loadout overhaul is coming soon, probably within the next. Well, so I'm probably going to be working on it within the next couple weeks. And for those who aren't familiar, the ship loadout overhaul is an idea that right now the way that ships work is dumb because fighter craft have like 4 upgrade slots, and one of them is an active slot, so like something that can be toggled. And then warships have a single active slot called the war mod, and then they have a targeter slot, and targeters are useless, so they essentially have one thing. And so we have this awful system where destroyers have the same number of modules or upgrades that can be equipped as corvettes, and fighters can have the most equipped, and it's just very silly. So, one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting rid of the distinction of ability and war mod and rig and targeter, and the other focus. We're going to be getting rid of all 5 of those and replacing it with the concept of active modules and passive modules. Um, so that's going to essentially make it so that ships are going to have different numbers of active modules and passive modules depending on their role and depending on their size. So, a fighter might have 1 active module and 2 passive modules, whereas a destroyer might have 4 active modules and 5 or 6 passive modules. Um, and the active and passive modules will do everything that the current upgrades in the game can do, plus a lot more. So
Yeah,
and
and one of the
and they won't need
if
to
you
be as
don't
overpowered too. Like
yeah
right now, the hull booster and shield booster are so overpowered, and we'll tone those down since you can equip multiple. Go ahead.
when also I just like the idea of the passive modules because the passive modules you put them on your ship and you don't have to touch them. And what they do is basically just modify a stat of the ship.
Hmm.
Like they can modify a bunch of things. They can modify the I won't even go into it because there's so many. But they're essentially upgrades that just modify the stats, while the active ones are a lot like the ones we have now.
Yeah. And so then, I guess the question that spawned us talking about the ship loadout overhaul was about whether or not you'll be able to equip kinetic weapons to fighters. And that is also part of the ship loadout overhaul, is sort of the idea that fighters, ships, small craft. It's kind of hard to know what to tell them because it's also miners and vendors and small haulers and stuff. But fighter craft, the small ships in the game, currently they if they have lasers, they have lasers and that's it. And we definitely want to mix that up. So we're going to be, hopefully, we can balance it out, and I'm pretty sure we can. We're going to be introducing hard points for fighter craft, which will allow you to swap out the base. It's sort of like a repeater currently, with different sorts of weapons. So there would be a kinetic variant, maybe a beam variant, maybe a beam paragon. We'll see. It would be more like a pulse laser than like the current beams, most likely. But and then of course once we introduce missiles, you'd be able to swap out a rocket launcher. And then for bomber type ships, you'd be able to equip like heavy, heavy torpedo type hard points. So that's sort of the thought there. There was also a question that Arctic pinged me about that was how about upgrades that currently exist? What's going to happen to those? Currently in the game, or I've implemented a solution for this essentially. So if you own an upgrade right now, you don't have to worry about like trying to sell it off or anything. It will get the plan is to have them automatically converted to their equivalent module, so they won't become obsolete. There will probably be a couple that don't wind up transferring over super well, but we'll basically translate all the upgrades to their closest module type. So so that's how we'll solve that. You won't lose any of the value, hopefully. Um, let's
Do we want
see.
to explain the distinction between main guns and point defense
Yeah,
guns?
and the repeater chain gun stuff probably too, right? I
That I
mean,
mean that's essentially the same question.
yeah, it is. Did you want to start or?
I mean, I can go over it really quick. And I think we have four main turrets, right? Like the four main damage turrets.
Yeah.
All right. So essentially, flak, chain guns, and repeaters are going to translate into specifically automated point defense turrets. So those are not turrets that you're ever going to put on your ship and manually really shoot at another player. They're going to become turrets that are always automated and that are always on their point defense slots, which are special slots. And then you'll have your four main damage turrets, or at least four until we add missile turrets. Right now it's four, right?
Yeah.
Which is your rail gun, your coil gun, your cannon, and your beam. Those will be turrets that remain the same, and those will still be equipped on your ship the normal way and controlled the normal way. Whereas repeaters, flak, and chain guns will become point defense guns, which are automated and put into the point defense slots.
We haven't quite figured out flak. Like flak is still a little
Flak is
funny.
a little odd, yeah.
So there's a chance that something like flak could wind up staying a main gun, but the plan right now is for it to be point defense, and we're excited about this because I think it's no secret that chain guns and repeaters both kind of suck. And they don't exactly have a place in the meta. Um, but giving them a specific role slot, like what they are for right now in the game, is for fighting smaller ships, but they're not even really good at that. And like, why would you waste a main gun slot on a repeater? So giving them their own specific slots is going to like make them useful, which will be really nice. It's also worth mentioning that the the other reason this is really cool is because um, damage types. So right now, each damage type has three types of turrets. So kinetic have chain guns, coil guns, and rail guns, and then laser has, of course, repeaters, cannons, and beams. And the original idea behind having three was that you would have a rapid firing close range one, a standard one, like a balanced variant, which is fires pretty fast, but isn't super rapid firing or super fast turning, and then a long range one. And so the idea was, oh, okay, we'll cover everything with these. But then, yeah, as mentioned before, it just kind of turned out that the repeaters and the chain guns were essentially redundant. Like, we couldn't make them powerful enough to compete with their standard variant. Like, chain guns couldn't be as powerful as coil guns, and repeaters couldn't be as powerful as cannons because that would just make them ridiculously overpowered.
And they were
So,
never designed to be more powerful either.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. Um, So now that we have for each type of damage in the game two turret types, so like the short range, or really it's the rapid firing version and the slow version, the slow firing version. And it's also like it's the rapid firing, not super fast projectile speed versus the slow firing fast projectile speed. So it's just there's a lot more distinction, and it's going to be a lot more obvious of what to choose for certain situations, and we won't have useless turrets anymore. So that's going to be fun. Um, yeah, so that's great. I don't know. We're really excited about this just because this has been a long time coming, and we're finally in a spot where we can really work on it. Let's see. Someone asked if the damage will be nerfed for the auto-firing weapons, and yeah, like the repeaters aren't going to be doing as much damage as they're doing now, I think. Like they're going to be smaller than like the physical model is going to wind up being smaller than it is currently, and they'll do less damage since they auto-fire. And they're really just for point defense against light fighter craft and missiles and stuff like that. So that's not to say you couldn't target a warship with them, but they're just going to do very, very little. Let's see. That's a good question. Medium chain gun and medium repeater, what's going to happen to them? I don't think we're going to have medium point defense slots. I think point defense slots are just going to be point defense slots. So the medium chain gun and medium repeater, I guess those won't really have a place in the new version. So I'll probably wind up using the system to transform them into so the medium chain gun would become a medium coil gun probably, and the medium repeater would probably become a medium cannon, I think is what we do
Arctic,
there.
Jeff, you were just
Hello.
gonna do the Q&A without me?
Sorry, I should have pinged you.
Yeah, no.
It
Well,
was it
I'm
was funny.
awake now,
I've never actually run one of these, so it was like I didn't know how to
Oh,
set it up at
yes.
first, but someone asked if point defense turrets will be their own slot. They will be their own slot, yes. I will probably let you put them in the bigger slots as well. Like if you have small slots, we'll probably let you put them in those slots as well because they'll be pretty underpowered relative to small turrets. So if you really wanted to put like 8 point defense turrets on a horizon, I don't really see why not. Um, no promises, but
Beautiful thread. Let's open this up.
so let's see. Yeah, you always know when Dandy enters the chat.
Yeah, there is no
Oh,
stealth
wow,
dandy.
wow, okay. I mean, you're not wrong, but
How many automated turret slots would be on corvettes compared to destroyers? We haven't actually really settled on numbers. I figure the first shot,
15.
probably 15.
I mean, it feels very
Just to start.
natural to go 2,
Two.
4, and like 6, right?
Yeah,
6 might be a bit too many, but we'll see. But like 2 on corvettes just
yeah.
feels kind of right.
I like 2 on corvettes, and then yeah, 2, 4, 6 is not bad. Definitely, like there's definitely opportunity
Yeah, especially
there.
if you're in a destroyer. Like if you're in a destroyer, 6 is enough to help protect you a bit. But
Just to clarify, someone asked if corvettes are getting nerfed. We're not saying that corvettes will have 2 turret slots. Well, we're saying they'll have 2.
Oh my
We're saying they'll
god.
have 2 point defense turret slots, and then
so
they will
overall,
keep
they'll have
their
6 turret
4.
slots,
Yes.
4 main and 2-point defense. So
Yeah. Now we do have like tentative plans to introduce a line of ships called gunships that I mentioned earlier. And these would be like Corvette-sized ships, but instead of having, they would get like bonuses to point defense, and they would have several point defense slots. I guess they'd probably have like 6 or something. And they'd be like a point defense dedicated ship. I don't know. We like the idea of adding that sort of thing because then fleet composition can be really interesting if we do that.
no player-controlled drones yet. I want them, but no, not yet.
Yeah, with a locking system, things like player controlled drones become possible, but they aren't on the roadmap right now. But basically every feature you could ever want that we couldn't do becomes possible with the target locking system. That's an exaggeration, but
Have you talked about missiles yet?
we have talked about missiles.
Someone
Okay, cool.
someone said point defense ship sounds like an AFK PVE ship. Yeah, if you want all of the ships larger than a fighter to destroy you,
Yeah.
then you can try that.
Point defense, I mean, similar to the way repeaters and chain guns are now, they're not going to do well against armor. So if a ship has armor, I mean, good luck.
So point defense is primarily against light fighters, including like the player Paragon and stuff. But they are also against missiles. They serve to protect you against fighters and against missiles, but they are not good at killing anything large.
Yeah.
That's for you to do. That's your job.
Part of me does wonder if we should. Someone asked a question about mining turrets, targeting multiple rocks using this new system, and part of me feels like that should be, because it is a little weird to just be able to activate mining turrets randomly.
I like the idea. I mean, look at what we did with tractor beams. Like those things are just
Yeah.
100 million times better.
So maybe we
We had
would
a
make it so you have to
jury-rigged
lock
system.
on to an asteroid in order to mine it.
I mean, I mine a lot, and I like the sound of that.
Hmm. Why do chain guns have an overheat mechanic if we have heat sinks? It's because they would have been kind of OP and really annoying to listen to otherwise. So, like I was firing them and they were really annoying after a while. And so I was like, I can't listen to this all the time. And I didn't want someone to just, you know, hold down their mouse button at Citadel all day and just spam chain guns. So it added overheat. But what's cool is that if we make them point defense, they don't need to have overheat because they'll only shoot at things that you're targeting. So that'll be nice.
I think I saw a little screenshot of it, Dandy, but I haven't seen it in good detail.
Someone asked a question about, will we have a tracking mode that will like automatically move your camera to ensure your target enemy is in your field of view? No. However, I can assure you that it is very easy to follow your enemies now. If you lock something, it is simple to keep it in your sights now. Like you will always know where it is. I don't know if everyone noticed, but if you check out the dev blog channel, you might not have noticed in the second screenshot, but the second screenshot actually shows arrows on the top and bottom of your screen that indicate what direction the ships you have targeted are. So you can keep track of things so much easier now. It's really not even funny. Um, let's see what else. Yeah, so signal cloak and locking is a good question. Signal cloak is still going to be a thing. It'll be carried over into the new module system. Signal cloak will wind up being a passive module probably. Um, but essentially on your mini map, so you'll only be able to lock onto things that you can see the tracker icon for. So the way that tracking currently works is you just hover over it. You hover over the tracker icon of the ship you want to lock onto, and you press F, like you do for everything, and that will lock on to the ship. There are also things that we want to do for, like, what if you have a paragon swarming you and you have a really hard time following it? You can't hover over it with your cursor in order to press F on it. We want to have other ways to lock onto things, in particular, like um, clicking on things on the mini map could be interesting, but we haven't really fleshed that out quite yet. Um, so we'll see. But most likely at release, most likely we'll probably try to have another way to lock onto things other than just hovering over them. But yeah, so if you have signal cloak and someone can't see your tracker icon, then they're not going to be able to lock onto you. And
Yeah,
you
I
can't
mean,
see them
signal
on the
cloak.
mini map as well.
Yeah, like the mini map and lock on only uses the tracker system, right? So if they're out of range, you can't see them on your mini map, and you can't lock on to them. So
Let's see. Squad target locking. That's interesting.
A squad leader target locking someone with a special icon that everyone can see would be neat.
Yeah, that could be something. I know that Eve has that sort of mechanic, and it's probably something that would be useful in large battles. So we will probably try to do something like that, but maybe not at initial release. We'll see what sort of time there, if we have enough time.
We never have enough time,
We
but
never ever
yeah.
have enough time. Yeah.
Yeah, locking will be how you disrupt people. I
Yeah.
mean, that's again, it doesn't change too much because locking or disrupting someone already works off of the tracker. So it's only going to slightly change how you do it, which means you'll have to lock someone and activate your warp disruptor, but it barely changes anything, so it's not too much to discuss.
Well, yeah, and so right now also when you go to activate your warp disruptor, it brings up this like giant list of people. If you're in a large battle.
The
And
list that goes off of your screen.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
list can go off of your screen and be absolutely horrible. And so this essentially solves warp disrupting in large engagements. You don't have to scroll through a giant list. Um, yeah, oh gosh, it's just so much. It's just a much better
It's so
experience.
pretty.
Um, Currently, I'm not intending for us to have locking take time. I think that would be too. It's just a little too complex. The time it takes to lock someone is how long it takes you to manually lock them, I think is fair enough. Um,
Yeah, I like target lock asteroids. We'll look into that.
yeah, we will.
Uh,
Um,
you, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was going to say that someone asked, every ability that relies on targeting people will depend on target locking system now, and the answer is most likely yes. Yeah, I can't really think of anything that wouldn't.
As for tracking incoming missiles, you won't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
So missiles will usually be flying too fast for you to really do anything about it. All of your PDC slots, all of your point defense slots, will automatically prioritize incoming missiles if they're in their firing arc. So
Yeah.
they'll detach from whatever target they're trying to shoot at, and they will automatically always prioritize missiles that are incoming. So you won't have to really worry about that. Because I mean, there's no way you're going to target lock a missile like.
Yeah, they're going to
That's
be moving so much faster than you, and they'll only be on
yeah.
screen for 2 or 3 seconds probably a lot of the time. So,
So yeah, you'll just kind of sit there and hope that you brought enough point defense.
um,
Yeah, you can hit it. You can still hit the missiles. Flak, especially if we leave Flak as a main
mhm.
turret, like its exploding radius will still explode when it comes into contact with a missile. So
Yeah, it is also worth saying that the missile system has not been developed yet, so things are
yeah,
subject to change, but most likely we're pretty sure we can do it in the best way possible.
and
Um,
yes, fighters will be able to replace their main guns with missiles if they want.
Someone asked, um, will there be a sound effect of someone locking on to you? I don't think we're going to actually tell you when other people lock onto you. I think it'll be basically just on your end. You'll see that you're locked onto someone, but it won't show up on other people's screens. We might change that if it winds up being something
I
that,
think
that
at the
people
very
really
least
want.
there should be a warning if a missile's incoming.
I kind of like players being warned when they've been target locked, but we
We
can look
could
into that.
we could
There's a lot
do
of
it.
yeah,
We could do it probably. It could also make things spammy and meta.
exactly.
You'd be able to meta
Especially if
game
you have
things.
10 people and each of them can lock 6 people, like
Yeah.
it can make a mess of things. As for like point defense being overwhelmed, or how accurate is point defense? Point defense is very accurate. It's
Yeah.
going to be pretty accurate. Um, and it's up to the enemy to really break through that. And there will be several missile types, and one that I discussed with Keth is swarm missiles, which just launch like each shot would launch like 8 smaller missiles, and those really don't do much. They're kind of just designed to overwhelm the point defense. But
Niner.
that hasn't been developed yet. There's just a lot of work we need to do on it. This is all conceptual.
Yeah.
So, Heiner, to answer your question about how will your PDC turrets turn fast enough, they'll snap to the missile.
Pretty much, yeah.
There's no turning. It's just snap to and fire. NPC target locking. You mean NPCs targeting things?
I feel like we've answered most of the major questions. I will probably go ahead and hop off here.
Yeah.
Gotta,
And NPCs will use missiles as well, obviously.
yeah, we're gonna all this stuff will yeah impact how NPCs behave and whatnot. And we're also taking a big look at how NPCs work in general. Like then basically the next month, I'm expecting to be working mostly on combat type improvements. Uh, we're in the end days of the accelerator program. It went really, really well. But we're also excited to be working on some other stuff and sort of refresh from all the player stations and skills work by doing some stuff that we've wanted to do for a while. Uh, Player stations are not completely finished. We're still working on them, but we're a little burnt out on it, to be honest, and so we need to refresh. And this is like fun stuff that we know everyone is gonna like and that we're gonna like working on. So that's sort of why we're working on it now. And also, all this ship loadout stuff has really been blocking us in terms of balancing and for introducing new mechanics. Because whenever we think of a new mechanic or a balance change we should make, it's like yes, but we need to do the ship loadout overhaul first. So
Oh, did we talk about mass testing and how that's gonna work?
No.
not yet,
Oh,
because I don't think we are totally positive on that yet, but we can
okay.
probably cover that in next time. But yeah, I'm going to head out. Thanks everyone for jumping on the Q&A. I did record this. I'll probably try to put it up on YouTube so you can go back if you
Bye,
missed some stuff.
Woody.
All right, catch you all later.